we talk about a lot of these things in business, but you're bringing up personal trials, stuff with my baby, stuff with your dad. It's like, those are the things that really you look back on your life and it's like, okay, in those moments, I found out what kind of a man I was.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Weapon X Holsters, quality handmade Kydex holsters made right here in Southern Utah. You can stop by the store, 1397 West Sunset Boulevard, number 115 in St. George, Utah. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derek Legg podcast. We're back in the vault. We've got a local business owner I'm excited to have on. We've kind of run in the same circles, but we finally met face-to-face a couple weekends ago, and I invited him to come on, and I'm excited to have him. This is Ben Gottfredson.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I'm excited, and it's cool because you're extremely comfortable because you've done all the podcast stuff, so
yeah,
it's kind of nice.
I'm a big fan. I love doing it, and happy to be here.
Yeah, so episode 98 belongs to Ben. Big Ben.
Yes.
So run me through a couple of the businesses you own, and then I just want to dive right in.
Okay. So Big Ben's moving service, that's just the moving entity, turned into Big Ben's Moving and Storage, which is the real estate side where we can provide both. And then that turned into Big Storage Ventures, which is basically after my first facility was good, we decided that we were going to do a series of storage deals every year. And so those are kind of the three big ones. We also, we have the podcast, the Beyond Net Worth podcast, but that's just more of a, it's just more supplemental. So
sure.
Yeah.
It's cool, man. Is it weird seeing like Big Ben moving big blue trucks driving around and like that's you? Is that weird to think?
It's funny because you'll drive past and you'll be like, holy cow, just by coincidence, I pass my truck like once a week.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's like the big name here is like Stephen Wade, right? And so all the license plates that say Stephen Wade, I'm like, I wonder if that's weird for him, like driving around and like 2/3 of the cars have his name on the back of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something I've always thought was different. Like, I don't know. No one knows my name, so I'm just an unknown person.
Everyone's starting to learn Derek Legg, man. No. Yes.
So that event that we met at was the real estate investing school conference called the Cash Flow Conference. And I asked Brody the same thing that started that. And I went up because there's like people taking pictures with him at the end, right?
Right.
And so I went up to him and I actually met him there as well. And
For the first time?
Yeah, same thing,
cool.
Dude. Ran in the same circles, know the same people. So when I saw him and he was kind of alone, I went up and introduced myself. So at the end, I was like, dude, is it weird that like people are like lining up to take pictures with you? Like, like we're all just guys, right? Like we kind of talked about before we started. I'm just a dude from Washington. You're a dude from Santa Clara, right? Yeah. And Brody's the same way. And now it's like people are paying hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars to be at events that he puts on and to go meet him.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm sure it's an identity thing, right? Like you have to, if you want to throw events and masterminds and sell a course, like you've got to consider yourself worth it, right? And so I think Brody has done a good job I know I played high school football with Brody, right?
Okay.
And I know I'm really close with his brother Landon and his other brothers too. But I'm sure that for him, he just believes in himself enough. He's paid the price on a lot of the stuff that he's done where he's like, yeah, I can sell this stuff now. And then he feels comfortable there.
Yeah. But I'm a student in the real estate investing. Are you, or did you just go to the conference?
So I am actually a part of Brody's mastermind.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do, because my real estate investing is specific just to storage. I pay for coaching specifically for storage.
Got you.
But I pay Brody really for general business advice.
Got you.
So I'm kind of a student.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess when he's teaching multiple things or has multiple followings,
right?
Someone's under one of those umbrellas, right? I can't even remember where I was going with that, but
you're a student in the school.
Oh, yeah. I've learned a ton with it. Eric Gubler kind of got me into it. I was more just watching his social media and a lot of his posts, and it's something I'd like to learn about. And we bought a short-term rental at the end of last year.
Congrats.
It's kicking our butts right now, dude. Ask me in 6 months and I'll tell you where we're
just
at on it.
What's high maintenance about it? The tenants or the actual real estate? You're trying
so
rehab or what?
Yeah, so we bought it. It's right outside Joshua Tree in California.
Okay.
It's 2 acres, 2 houses with a pool. We bought it for $600.
Whoa.
And so I felt like we did pretty good on the property. And I thought it was like paint job, go live type of thing. And so I got a bunch of quotes to paint it, and they're 20, 30 grand to paint the full inside and out, both houses.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, dude, like I've got hookups with paint guys. Like I can probably get the product and go paint it myself. And so I got my brother, who's pretty much construction everything. Mm-hmm. Like by trade, he's an electrician, but he's done everything.
Yeah.
And so I called him and said, hey, what are you doing next weekend? I bought this property. I need to go paint it. Do you want to come help me? So I thought, like, we'll drive down there, knock it out in a weekend.
Yeah.
That turned into 2 weekends. That turned into 3.
Yeah.
That turned into pulling carpet. That turned into doing bathrooms and tile.
Oh, yeah.
And so we've rehabbed both properties now, all of it. I mean, the whole thing's remodeled.
Wow.
Countertops, all of it.
It's going to pay off.
And dude, I hope. So we've had it for 6 months, and we just went live last month on one of the houses.
Wow.
So we are arguing with the county on permit issues for 2 months.
Wow.
And you know what it seems like? It seems like for them to do anything other than their script that they're handed is more work for them.
Yeah.
So they'll just shut you down. Even though I make complete sense about all of it.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, I wanted to rent it as one listing on Airbnb. So we don't have the houses, there's a breezeway. They're attached by a roof, but there's a breezeway. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, no, it's one listing, because I don't want to rent like one out to one group and the other out to the other group, and they share a pool and a driveway. And,
yeah.
Yeah. And so they wouldn't let me because they said it's 2 separate dwellings. And dude, I fought with them, and I'm like, it's on the same electricity bill, it's on the same water bill, it's under one roof, and I checked every box except for there wasn't a physical hallway that attached them. So anyway, we'll see how it goes, but finally I was like, I'm gonna stop fighting it. Maybe it's better, I don't know. Like, I don't have any short-term rentals. Maybe we're better off having 2 listings in the same area. I don't know. And so I'm sure there'll be some more hurdles to jump when someone rents it thinking they have a pool and their party animal, other tenants are in the pool. I don't know.
Yeah, we have similar challenges with storage and getting that zone. A lot of people, as bad as people don't want nightly rentals, there's some people that don't want storage even worse. So
what's wrong with storage? What are the complaints with that?
I think that has a bad connotation in people's mind. They picture kind of the junkyard of the 80s storage yards, Obviously now you have to build a really nice product if you're building brand new, but I think some people still have storage as a bad thing when it's really a good product. So we just have to overcome some of those misconceptions, and I've lost some of those battles, just like you're saying. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we ended up having to do 2 permits separately, which is going to create 2 listings, which I think is going to create problems.
Double the work on some stuff.
Yeah. And we have a manager taking care of all of it. Her name's Sarah out there, and she's doing a good job. And I mean, she was working with us for like 4 months and hadn't made $1 because we weren't even live.
Wow.
Waiting for permits. And so first one's live last month. It's been rented out 4 times. 5 times last weekend, and then it's hitting weekends, right? I have like no weekdays booked, but all the weekends have been booked pretty much.
Cool.
And then the second house, we get the permit next week, so we can get that one live next week. So I talk about that a little bit on the podcast. A little update for everyone if you're following
Good for you, man.
the short-term rental.
You got to get in real estate, right?
I think you have to.
It's one thing to make money, but real estate's how you can keep money and hold on to it.
What do you mean by explain that? What do you mean by that? I know what you mean, but explain it to the audience.
Just simply, I mean, I don't know. For me, I guess it's a lot harder to hang on to money. Like it's easier for me to get gross revenue up than to get the net and hang on to it and eliminate liabilities. And so I think real estate's something that most people come to the conclusion it's one of the best ways to hang on to
And that's what I started finding. Like
money. Yeah.
And with your moving business, maybe you have some similarities with this, but jobs that or businesses, what I thought businesses that I was starting, I just owned my job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I was doing all the labor, I was putting in all the time, I was doing all of that. And I'm still trying to figure out how to transition from that. And so I want to talk about that with you, having, 40 plus employees. So that I had a mentor, he's kind of been mentoring me. I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad a few times, right? And then he told me to read Cash Flow Quadrant, and I never read that one. And that's what it talks about is like your employee, like your 5 to 9, your self-employed, your business owner, your investor.
Yeah.
And I'm a business owner, I'm a self-employed. I'm trying to be a business owner.
Right.
And so I just never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And so it's, how do you have more streams of income? For me, it's how do I create more streams of income that don't include me putting in all the hours?
Right.
Right. Maybe talk about that a little bit, because you guys have really, I think you've scaled this.
Yeah, and it takes a certain mindset, right? Because a lot of people get to a certain point and then they don't want to delegate because they either want to hang on to a bigger piece of the pie or they need everything to go perfect, right? So I think people's perfectionism and people's, I don't know if I want to say like greed, but it's like short-term thinking, right? So one thing I would say is like one of my strengths is I'm not a perfectionist. I have an expectation for excellence, but like I'm willing to trust someone to not do it as, even if I know they're not going to do as good as I would, if they can still put out a degree of excellence, I'm going to give them some trust, right? So like with my business, it started from really humble beginnings where we just had a pickup truck and a 12-foot trailer, and I was on every single job, and it scaled to the point where, I was in college, so I would run every day that I didn't have class, and then on the days I had class, I would do the administrative calls, right?
Okay.
And I'll spare the details, but it just grew to the point where I couldn't even keep up with the calls enough to go on many of the jobs at all, and I would just do the long distance and the calls, right?
Okay.
And then finally, when we got, we grew to the point where now I delegate all the calls. We have a sales department, dispatchers, we have marketing, and I just kind of oversee all that. Same thing with storage too, right? And so you kind of have to learn to delegate and trust people. And sometimes you do it from the bottom up, meaning you delegate like the easiest stuff first, all the way to the hardest stuff. And then sometimes, like with my big storage ventures, I actually am doing it the opposite way, where I don't even have the time to do some of the high level work. So I have to hire an executive first, and then slowly we'll build a team out underneath, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's definitely always got challenges, but if you can oversee the processes and systems, you can do it,
So do you think one way is better than the other, going ground up versus, at the top down, or does that depend on situation, do you think?
It's situational, right? Because what's more important to you, is your time more important or your money? So at the moving company, I needed that capital to be injected back in the business. And so it was actually more important for me to have that income coming in than it was for me to have my time freed up. So I still hung on to I hung on to everything for as long as I could. And it was only when I saw that the business couldn't continue growing without me giving something up that I would delegate. And then with the other business, the storage investments, like that, it's almost the opposite, where it's like I actually don't have the time to put out an executive level effort on this business full time. So if I can, because I still have my I still have everything else in my life I need to manage. The moving company is high maintenance, especially if you want to do a good job. I have my personal life, all my other obligations. So to do the storage investments right, I had to start with an executive because I needed to have a good executive level output, and I didn't have the time to do it without just on my own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So my time was more important than the capital, so I could fork over a bigger salary on that second business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think my struggle with that, because I'm running a few things every day, and to be honest, it's like in the last 5 years, it's kicking my ass. like when I was 25, I was like, I could run 3 businesses. I have the energy, I have the time, I have everything, and
Right.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just being unhealthy or having a kid or getting older or all of them. I don't know, but it's like it's not even like my ambition, just my energy is like just not what it was when I was 20, you know? And I guess, I mean, I'm only 34, but I don't know. It feels that way. So let me ask you this. So
Sure.
one of my issues, in really any of my businesses, like, so we have contract post office routes that we'll get into a little bit more.
Right.
I've been able to rebid those contracts to be higher to where I could pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, there was nothing left, you know? So I've been able to kind of structure those, and I figured those out. And like, I'd still love for them to even pay more than they do. Like they probably should. Again, we'll talk more. We'll dive into that.
Right.
Because people ask me about the contracts all the time. So it'd be cool to kind of jump into it.
Government works tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because you think like all the money that the government spends, there'd be money to go around. But at the same time, it's the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
You know?
Money's not going to the right place, I promise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, so like our safe store, like I'm extremely involved there. Like when people ask me what I do for work, I just tell them I run the safe store.
That's your baby.
Yeah.
That's kind of your cash cow too, right?
Sure. 100%.
Yeah.
Especially with those contract routes. One of them, I'm probably breaking even if I'm lucky. The other one, I'm making a little bit. It's more of just like a management fee than I'm really making anything on them.
Yeah.
But I keep them because I figure, well, it's part of the Constitution that everyone has mail delivered. And so pretty much the government would have to fail for us to not have a job out there.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my thought was, and COVID kind of proved a little bit of that. A lot of people couldn't go to work, and we were going out delivering mail every day.
Yeah.
And so that's my thought with the mail routes. I keep them, one, because it does provide income for families, and like I have a little bit of pride in that, knowing that I can help them out, and that I'm around and they have access, you know, for whatever, whether it's whatever, etc. But yeah, I keep it not because I make a lot of money. I keep it because I feel like it's a guaranteed job.
Right.
And then the safe store, that's my struggle, and you've accomplished it. So this is the input I want to get from you. I'm just like, where's the money to like pay anyone else? And we did over $500,000 out of it last year. But you got to understand, like, we're buying a safe for $1,000 and selling it for $1,400.
Yeah.
And so like there's a large acquisition cost for the sell cost, right? And so I'm trying to figure out, do I need to lower prices to get more sales? Right now, I don't even know if the sales are there because the economy's slow, plus summer's usually slow for us anyway.
Right.
But I don't know. What's your input? Do you have any input on that? Is it just, I'm like...
It's tough, man. I don't know your industry, right?
Sure.
But I'll tell you, my little brother, Matt, he started a painting company called Brushfire Painting. So he's a painting contractor now.
Okay.
And I love just talking with him about it. And he has the same conflict where it's like he's basically competing to win jobs, and he has to do a lot of the work himself if he wants to make good money, right? And if he delegates it out, it doesn't work. And so I basically told him, and I don't know if this applies to this, but it's just like, look, if you can't raise the prices high enough to pay someone else to take on the work, and at the same time you don't want to be doing the work, something's got to give.
Yeah.
Right. Either you've got to make a huge pivot. You could try investing more into marketing or doing a different business model. You could try, cutting down your margin somewhere else, but it's not sustainable. And so I just basically told him, you've got to try something else, right? And I think the customer experience is, I think a lot of times we worry about raising prices, but the customers understand what a good experience costs, and you can even sell on, hey, we're doing this at, for our moving company, we're middle of the line, right? So we're never like, there's always going to be someone that's going to tell you something lower and a lot higher, but we're just going to be in the middle, right? And we tell people that have an issue with price, just like, look, to run a good company, pay guys a good wage, not cut corners on, like insurance and things like that. This is the price. And we can feel really confident about that. I'm sure there's something you could do with your saves too.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my struggle with it right now is like gross money wise, like that's where I make most money,
right?
By far is in that store. Net, it's right around most of the other stuff, but gross numbers, that's where a lot of the money comes from. And it has the most potential, I believe, out of everything I do. Like those contract routes, they are what they are. Like there's really not any growth in that. With this store, I have like a vision. I have what I think it could be, right? But I have that struggle where I'm like, is this just going to be me owning my own job forever? Or is this ever get to a point where I can step away? And I have a kid there that's a senior and getting ready to graduate right now. And I don't pay him as much as he could go other places. Mm-hmm. But for him, what's cool is like he sees the value in what I'm trying to do, and he knows he can learn. And like I'm getting into real estate, and that's really what he wants to do. Yeah. And so he's like, I can be here and learn all this stuff from you, and maybe not make as much, or I can go work at Del Taco and make $17 an hour and not have any of these conversations.
Right.
And so luckily he sees that value in that as a younger kid. But yeah, I don't know. Business dude, there's sometimes, I mean, you're higher up on the scale than I am, but I think about blowing it up all the time, man. Like, I'm just like, dude, is this worth it? And when it's like I have a lot of highs and I have a lot of lows. There's not a whole lot of plateaus. It's either up or down for me, it seems like. And maybe that's my own mental health. I don't know.
No, man, I think there's a price that comes to entrepreneurship that a lot of times, you've said this, that we don't talk about the struggles as much as we do, right? The successes. And people have to understand the price of handling all these things. Like I won't spend too long on this, but like, you have incidents with vehicles, you have customers that need your attention, you have your employees that need your attention, right? You're constantly trying to make sure that they're compensated well enough and keeping them happy. And eventually you'll have people that, if you do business long enough, there's legal things that come up, right? So there is all this commotion that comes around the lifestyle, but I think you always have to be able to keep your why there and not get too high or too low. And so, yeah, I think it's not, I think a lot of people try it and don't stick with it. And maybe they just need a pivot, or maybe they need a different stress level lifestyle. But
yeah,
for me, that's kind of what it's cost,
Well, it seems like you have a high stress tolerance. I mean, you're doing all this with a big smile on your face.
You have to. Yeah. And you, like I always use the analogy of triage, like an emergency medic, mm-hmm. right? Like my life is like that. Like I'll leave this podcast, I'll have a bunch of calls or texts, and I'll just have to identify, okay, what's the most important thing for me to do next, right? And I always say, like, if you're on the battlefield, that guy's for sure, he's going to die for sure. This guy's for sure going to live, but this guy, I have a chance to save him. And so I'll start there and then I'll work outwards. Right? Okay. So try to identify what's the most important thing for me to do next, and don't let the stress get to you. Another thing too that helps is just making sure that you have enough people you can delegate to. And so that's obviously it conflicts directly with your goal of keeping your margins high. Right. You got to decide if you want to take on the hassle of some of the duties that go on in your business. And so you get to decide if you want the higher margin or if you want the time freed up to work on other stuff. But I also hired an executive assistants that kind of I can just delegate stuff off to. And so I'm only staying in the zone where I thrive, right? So
Love that.
That's
dude.
a big deal too.
Yeah, but I envy that you figured all that out. Because where does that come from? Did you have any entrepreneurships in your family? Any schooling? Any mentors? Where'd you get that from, dude? Because that's very a mature way to look at it. I mean, how old did you say you are again?
28.
Yeah, so I've got 6 years on you, and I haven't figured any of that out. I'm still trying to work on it.
There's strengths you have that I don't, man. It's a process. I don't have anyone necessarily that, my dad and my mom were both W-2. They have rental properties and stuff. And so I think it just comes from experience. I was almost more wired for it, I think. I had this business going through college and I graduated and I got a corporate job. But after I got the corporate job, I just went back to entrepreneurship just because it's more how my brain works, right? Because the thing about it is the entrepreneurs get the most fun jobs and the least fun jobs, right? And then everything else, is in the middle that you can kind of delegate out if you organize it, right? But for me, the most rewarding parts of being an entrepreneur have always been worth the least fun parts of it.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
That's how you stay balanced.
Just try to not get too high or too low, right?
Yeah. So how does the storage stuff work? Is it fairly automated? Is it a lot of time for you? Do you have someone else taking care of it? How does that work? Diving
more into storage, right? So while I was scaling the moving company, I was buying up real estate, right? And so the first kind of real estate I got, they call it house hacking. I call it frat houses, where I have, houses where I have 9 college guys just renting stuff out by the room, right? And that's a really popular way to do it. And that's a good way for people to get their foot in the door. So I was understanding, cash flowing real estate, building appreciation, all the tax benefits. And I was running the moving company and I would get calls for storage units all the time. Hey, can you do my move? Yeah, sure. We'll do your move. Can you store my stuff? Oh no, you'll have to call this person. But then I finally caught the vision. Okay, we're going to do this. So in 2019, I bought some land. I had to go to all the different bankers in town, had to fight the city, learn. I didn't have a mentor really. I just had to kind of learn from beating my head against the wall. We got the first facility and we were right about the demand. There was so much demand that while the units were being built, we were filling them up. So we never really, most storage projects, you have to bleed a little bit while you make the payments before you're full, and then you start to get profitable. But we were able to fill the units in a fast enough pace that we really never had a negative. We never had anything negative besides just the interest only payments at the very beginning that were pennies, compared to what we could make. So after that, I kind of had a decision. I fell in love because it pairs so well with the moving company.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, we can do one of these storage facilities every 3 years and I'll own 100%. And this was another important mindset shift. I can own 100%. I can just go at that pace, or I could do some more rapid growth and put together storage deals. And what, the perspective was like, oh, I'd be giving up ownership, but I could also, I could be a part of more deals, get in on them earlier so that over time it'll be way worth it, right? And I had that perspective shift to no, there is scenarios where if the roles are clear, you need to cut people in because you can help each other. And you hear a lot of people talk about storage units like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to own storage units. That seems like a good investment. But it's really hard because there's lots of barriers of entry. And also lots of people think it's going to be like a cakewalk, and because it's easier than other things, but really they end up creating like a job for themselves.
Right.
And so we help people get into storage. We have the experience and we have the moving company to fill their units up, but we can truly make it passive. A lot of people think it's going to be passive, but if they do it on their own, it's not. It's a job, just like your Airbnbs you're sharing about. So we can use our infrastructure we've already created to just run their facility and just mail them a check. And so they get to be a part of it and have that, that accomplishment and that income without necessarily having the pain of going through the process. We'll do that for them.
So they have the facility and so explain that a little more. I guess I don't quite understand. So it's their facility, but then you come in and basically,
we're partners. So we would basically take equity for putting the deal together.
Okay.
So we hunt the deals and we find, we basically find opportunity that other people couldn't find. And then we partner up, and then they would bring the capital.
Okay.
And then we would basically manage everything, and then we'd take a cut of equity.
I got you.
So
it's a win-win.
And a lot of times I put my own money in. So I'll buy some of those, what we call limited partner shares. Limited partner shares are basically the money shares, and then the general partner shares are the work shares.
Okay.
So I take all the work shares, and then I put my own money in and buy some of the money shares too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's called syndications. We put together deals, and people can participate and have all the benefits.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, you're like brokering the whole thing, but at the same time, you have skin in the game as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of people like it when I put my own money in, or my brother's money in, or my in-laws' money in, because they're like, oh, this guy, they get to know me, and they're like, okay, he's not going to do something and like screw his in-laws or his brother.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it builds some trust, and that's a lot of the reason why we try to do podcasting and get the word out, is just so people can understand our mission and build credibility and stuff like that too.
So what is your why? You had mentioned you got to keep your why top of mind. So what is your why?
My why, you could sum it up with, I love freedom, because my true why is family. I'm very relationship oriented.
Okay.
So I'm very religious too. So I like to free up my time to serve and participate in that. I don't ever want to have like an opportunity to do something for someone and not be able to go do that. Right. And then at the same time, like, I believe that family is most important. So when I'm planning out my calendar, I want my calendar to reflect my priorities too. So I'll plan out, church, obviously, temple every month, I'm currently asked to help the youth in our church. So I always pencil that in. It's like the first thing on the list, then family time, then any bucket list items that I want to check off, and then I'll fill in the rest with work. Okay. So it's kind of reverse of what a lot of people would do, but it doesn't leave a lot of time for, wasting time. So my why is my family, my faith, and things like that. And so the business is just a vehicle to really give me freedom. And another thing it does is it helps me. I do have some intrinsic rewards from providing people income, and also for serving customers too.
Yeah.
That makes me feel good too.
Yeah, that was a shift for me, dude, from going from like chasing the dollar to trying serving people.
Yeah.
I feel like the podcast is one of those things that helps me serve people.
Yes, it does.
And
people love it.
Like the audience is great, but I've even left episodes with a guest that I didn't know until we sat down.
Yeah.
And they were like, dude, that really helped me. Like, even just someone putting words out there, just talking about it. And I'm like, yeah, dude, this is basically therapy for me.
Iron sharpens iron, right? So when you get someone, the phones are put away for the whole time. And
which is rare to begin with.
You get to give something and also take something, and it's a really special thing that in our society it's kind of lost.
Sure. So yeah, the last guest we were talking about that a little bit, where like a lot of people younger than us, I don't even know how many of them could sit down and just have a conversation like this, right?
Yeah.
And I've been doing a little bit of work in high schools, and I was actually at the high school yesterday, and it's funny because there's like 2 or 3 outliers in a class that they'll come up to me after and shake my hand, introduce. Well, a couple of them got my number and things like that. And I'm like, and everyone else was just boop, about face, phone out of pocket and out the door.
Yeah.
And it like makes me feel like I'm proud to know that there's still some kids that have that interaction, you know, if that's the right way to say it. But I don't know, dude, the high school thing's been a whole different thing for me. And I just thought it's just a stupid goal I had of going and speaking in high schools. So 12 high schools and like classes in the
Wow.
year was my goal this year. And
That's awesome, man.
it's more because I'm terrified of like public speaking. So it was kind of a like Microsoft's not going to hire me to go speak in one of their conferences, right? So I was like, I got to start somewhere.
Not yet. They will soon.
And I don't even know if it's something I want to keep pursuing, right? But it was just something that I don't like. And so I was trying to push myself out of that comfort a little bit. And man, like the first class I talked in, I was like, dude, this is fun. Like I really enjoyed this. And it was the perfect class to talk into because it's probably the most receptive class I've talked to as well. Like
Cool.
I think I kind of got lucky on my first one because I was like, felt really good about it. And they've all been great, but there's just been some that were less interactive than the first one. Right. And then I've gotten like close with the teacher now. Like we'll text every now and then. Some of the kids have taken my numbers and text me. A lot of them are following the podcast. So I don't know. It's just been a cool experience.
That's awesome.
And the podcast, when people ask me, what do you get out of the podcast? Like, how much are you making?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I don't make any dollars, but the relationships I've put together from it is priceless, really.
Yes.
And some of the phone numbers I've gotten from doing this, I mean, I've reached out to a handful, dozens and dozens of guests that I've had on that I didn't know before they walked in the studio. Yeah. Right. So I don't know, dude, the podcast has been a cool thing. What's your experiences doing your guys's and what's your structure on yours? Like, cause it's different than mine. I mean, you're more beyond net worth. So it's more business. Your guests are more business.
Right.
Maybe talk about yours a little bit.
Yeah, no, the Beyond Net Worth podcast, we bring on people who not only have, successful business, but also what we feel like is probably the more important ingredient, which is just good values, good work-life balance, because really you can have money and be miserable but you can't really be a good person and be miserable. And so we want to find people that have both, right? And so that's our podcast started because my partner, Callan Webster, I was trying to get him out of the rat race and get him into business. Like we've been best friends for a while. And I was just like, dude, you gotta get out. He's just such a hard worker, so trustworthy, such an amazing, smart person. I was like, okay, we needed you up to your potential. What ended up happening is we were working so close with the podcast that we actually became business partners with Big Storage Ventures.
Oh, nice.
So when I talk about the executive that I hired for that, that's kind of, we were just rubbing shoulders, and it just became, I feel like even before we said it out loud, we both just kind of realized like, we're going to work together. There was some apprehension too, because you always want to make sure with someone that you love and care about that you set a partnership up right. So like we still, we were both very concerned that our friendship would be preserved. So we had to draft out our agreement with lawyers, even though we're best friends. We said like, let's just do this with lawyers. Let's get this legit so that we're both very satisfied. And it's been awesome. It's helped us preserve our friendship. And literally I spend as much time with Callan as I do my wife. So anyways, but I kind of digress, but that's the mission of the podcast is just, it's about business, but showing what business can really bring to your life too. So,
one thing I'm trying to focus on in more recent episodes is the struggle.
Yeah.
I think that's what people can relate to even more than the successes. Right. Yeah. And if you're driving, or anyone that's driving around St. George sees Big Ben moving trucks and they think, man, that guy's killing it. Right. And so it's like, let's back that up, dude. And if you want to go specific stories, you can. If you just want to go like lessons learned, you can.
Oh man.
And I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
No, it's good. And I would say we kind of hinted at this, that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. Right. And I think, just little memories flash into my mind, right? Like getting that call at 4 a.m. that your truck hit ice, right? It's just like, oh man, that's so overwhelming, right? What are you going to do? You're going to survive. You're going to get through it, right? From zooming out a little bit, like I wasn't handed anything, like I was never given anything, but also just like, I've also never had, I feel like I've been blessed without having any like crazy traumas either. So you know, I hear other stories like you share with me your story about your father, and it's like, man, I have so much more respect for people that pull themselves from situations like that, because I feel like those types of things, I never paid the price that you have to get where you are. You know what I mean? So for me, were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
For me, like my struggles have just been, I've had, you know, just stuff with relationships, different troubles in my life. But really I've been very, very fortunate compared to a lot of people, I'd say. So when I think of the struggle, I just think of times early on, you know, bootstrapping this thing, and people maybe doubting, or people maybe trying to dissuade me, and just not giving up has been tough. But I just kind of made the decision ever since I quit that corporate job. I just never looked back, which I feel like has served me well. Just being willing to, not that I don't ever look up and check if I should be changing things or pivoting, but just that I'm never going to give up on my why and my general direction. You know, I hinted at this, you start to have people that have misconceptions, and I've had, you know, I try to hire really clean cut guys, and I've never really had any of my guys like, actually like do anything to a customer. But I've had guys that they'll do like time card theft or things like that because they feel like they deserve a bigger piece of the pie. And so you have that stuff. You have, when you get into real estate, like with the real estate, the storage investments we're doing, right? We had some realtors misrepresent a property. You talk about zoning,
Yeah.
and now we're in like a lawsuit, right? So that's like, I have that hanging over. And so I think you just have to, from a struggle standpoint, you have to know that it's part of what's going to come your way if you want to keep growing. And I think a lot of people keep their businesses small because they know that. I'll share one example. Like with a moving company, you have to get set up with the DOT to go across state lines and do that right. And there's a lot of overhead, and you have to basically have a full-time person managing that. You have to have insurance goes up. You have to have your drivers have to be set up and trained better, you know, things like that. And I think it's really overwhelming, and it still is for me. And we've had to really work to get from when I started. We weren't set up right. We weren't doing it the right way. And it's been paying the price to get there is just something that I think that's why a lot of people keep their businesses small, but we had to pay the price to get there. So now we can serve more people. And there's lots of big, overwhelming things like that you have to do.
Yeah. And I think that's that transition from self-employed to business owner, right?
Right.
It comes with its own, I would imagine, like I said, I'm still trying to figure that transition out, but it comes with a whole nother list of headaches.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Keeping it smaller is probably, I don't know, maybe this isn't the right thing to say, but it's probably a little less of a headache to keep it smaller and have less just moving parts.
Yeah, in many ways. I mean, there's pros and cons, right? Obviously, if it was all better to keep it small, no one would ever grow big.
Yeah.
Like for me, just a sidebar, but I always wonder why people, you know, they set up those big corporations that get taxed harder. I'm like, why would anyone ever do that? Because I'm still under smaller tax class, right? But it's because they want to go bigger. They want to build empires. They're not playing small. They're playing for big things, right? And so I think the more that you catch that vision of not limiting your potential and saying, okay, if I were to go big, all the problems could be solved. I would figure it out. That's a mindset shift you got to have.
Yeah. Do you think everyone can make that mindset shift? Or do you think everyone's cut out to be that?
Everyone could, but I don't think, I think a lot of people maybe shouldn't, right? Like I know I have a friend and his dad runs a blue collar business, right? And is in his late 50s and he's still in it every day, right? And he should be lining up to retire soon.
Yeah.
But he's still in it every day because he's not willing to pass things off. He cares more about, making sure things are done his way and not getting out of his comfort zone, that there's going to be the price, and the price is he's going to be stuck with a job, right?
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you're always going to be working, but your work activities are going to change, and they're going to make your lifestyle so that you can have that flexibility you want.
So what's the goal? What's the goal with all the ventures and everything you're doing, man? Is it to remove yourself one day? Is it to sell it one day? Is it to leave it to your kids? What is it?
The goal is, like I said, the biggest goal with that is freedom, right? And I don't feel like I already feel like I'm not working. When I wake up, my calendar's full with work activities, but I've positioned it so I'm not doing things that, obviously sometimes I have to do the hardest jobs.
Yeah.
But the day-to-day, it's all delegated out, and my activities are where I have my best ROI and I'm most happy. And so I think I could sustain the lifestyle I'm on perpetually, right? And so I think the goal with the business, we want to blow it up as big as we can. We have financial goals, but the goal is really freedom and not just making money, but hanging on to it, like we said. I feel like you really can't let your guard up, right? Like I feel like I use this analogy, you guys are sports family, right? I don't know if you've ever seen a basketball game where one team's up and they just start passing the ball around and they don't try to make any baskets. And what ends up happening is they get the ball stolen from them because they weren't being aggressive. They let off the gas,
exactly.
Right? So I think, and they're just trying to burn off the clock. I don't think you can ever get to that mode where you try to burn off the clock. I think you got to be, either crossing off bucket list items, doing something worthwhile. I don't think you ever want to get to that point where you're just relaxing.
Run up the score.
Yeah. Run up the score.
Run up the score.
Yes. Run up the score, because things can change fast. And, I hear a lot of people talking about retiring, and it depends on your definition of retiring at a young age. I mean, but it's like, don't feel so safe. Like if you make, say you can cash out of a business with $10 million, right? Or something like that, that could evaporate. Like who knows what's going to happen in the world.
Right.
So you're probably not going to want to, even if you cash out of a business with 10 million at age 30, it's like, you might not want to let your foot off the gas. You might just want to reposition yourself, posture yourself for different work activities, and find ways to multiply that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So I don't know.
You're one lawsuit away from being broke.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
And most people, knock on wood, right? But you hear a lot of people that you have on your podcast and my podcast, they have to start over at some point.
Yeah.
Which is just pretty crazy. But a lot of people have risen from the ashes, right? After a big recession or something happens in their family, so don't ever get too comfortable, I would say. Yeah.
That's my grandpa's story. So my parents met in high school here in St. George, and my grandpa was a builder, had a partner, super long story short, partner left town, cleaned out the bank account, had to start over. He had to do that 2 or 3, I think they started over twice, though they had 2 tragedies, started over 3 times, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And so they really started over in their late 40s, 50s for the last time. And I'm probably going to get corrected on that, but later in life, they had to start over. And now I'm kind of an open book. I don't know if they'd want me throwing it out, but they have, I think it's $4.2 million in real estate right now.
Wow.
And they started over and when they were 50 and they're 80 now,
Yeah.
And so I just think it's like that, right? But think of all those lessons that they had to learn through all of that.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because I've had a lot of conversations with my grandparents and I know those things that happened to them, but I wouldn't say that, and this isn't a knock on them, but I wouldn't say that we were ever sat down and mentored through anything. Right.
Right.
And so that's they were always into the stock market, always into investing. After the 2008 crash, they did really well in real estate, going and buying up a lot of stuff cash.
Nice.
That's really where they grew their last, decade of wealth. And I don't know though, like I that's one thing that I would want to change moving forward in my lineage is, okay, this is what we did. This is how we did it. These were the potholes. Let me help you maybe dodge those potholes and pass that knowledge down.
Yeah.
Right.
You're big on that. I've listened to your podcast before when you've talked about generational wealth and not only passing down, it's not about money, it's about the knowledge, right? It's about the legacy.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a great goal. I think for me, my biggest goal, one of my biggest goals is that my kids, they all have the principles, right? You don't want to pass down your business to someone who's going to piss it away.
Right,
you know what I mean? You want your daughters and sons to be very, very prudent, very sharp. And so I think that's one of the big challenges that I'm looking forward to tackling is how can I give these kids the world and still keep them hungry for to challenge themselves, right?
Yeah, I would want like if I died and let's say I gave everything to the church.
Yeah.
But like monetarily, right? Like
Okay.
I wrote a check to the church and gave them everything. I would still want my kids or grandkids or however old I get to still have that knowledge to be able to move forward and build their own thing, right? Like that's what generational wealth is to me, is the knowledge passing on. It's like, yeah, the money's great too. I mean, if you can give them a platform that neither of us had, great. But it's a huge thing, and having kids that changed that for me. Well, let's talk about you, dude. So newer dad.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about family, dude. I love bringing up family, and it is because exactly what you just did. Like the expression on people's faces just change.
Yeah.
Like it's a whole different, it's like business is cool. Making money's cool. The grind, the wins, the losses. Oh, my family, and everyone lights up.
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit about your wife too, because your wife's starting to do some big things and wants to, and has a growth path that you guys are trying to take her on. But talk about your guys' baby.
Yeah, so our daughter McKinley, she's 7 months old, and she's our little angel child. It's like I'm one of those guys.
So even your voice changed.
Yeah, yeah. No, obviously she. We'll just have to. This is what I do every time someone asks. I just have to show the picture on the phone. Your wife and baby. You have to show off your kid. But so I'm one of those people, and.
Did you ever think you would be? Because I never thought I'd be that guy.
Right.
People are like, "How's your son?" I'm like pulling my phone out.
Yeah,
I'm like that guy now.
Don't ask unless you want me to go off, right? Because no one's really interested in other people's kids, but everyone wants to share their own, right?
You're right.
But yeah, McKinley's changed our life. She actually, I don't think too many people know about this, but she actually, we got really scared because she on her ultrasounds, she was showing up with a big cyst on her lung. Yeah, man. So I'll share this experience. So we go for the day we were going to find out her gender, right? So there's actually it's kind of sad but funny, but like the ultrasound tech, she was not playing it cool. She was not playing it off well. I picture this, she'd be like, okay, yeah, like everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
I see something, but no big deal. Have the doctor come in and explain it to you. She's like, oh no. We're like, what?
Yeah.
What?
This is not the time to say, oh no.
Yeah. We're like, oh no. And she's like, I do see something on her lung. We're like, oh my gosh, So the day that we found out, she was a girl, we had a big party, but like my wife, she's taking it really tough because they're like, obviously there's different outcomes. She could survive. Like it wasn't like a sure death sentence, but it's like, this could be fatal basically. Yeah. So, and this is a sidebar, but my wife wanted to she's really like a natural, girl. So she wanted to have the baby in the bathtub type of thing.
Yeah.
And she had to have the baby at Primary Children's. Right. But anyways, so it really stretched us, just like to have that faith to hang on. And it just brought about, what's really important in life, and she so miraculously, she was born at the Primary Children's up in Salt Lake. And, so what happened is she had a cyst on her lung and they were hoping that it wouldn't kind of take over, but she's tough and 3 months after she was born, they went in and they actually removed half of her right lung.
Wow.
And so we're very blessed because lungs compensate. And so her lung, because she got it taken out so young, her other lobe will actually fill the space. So
Really?
she'll have like a normal life, you know.
Huh.
And the doctors are still keeping an eye on her, but you know, just so overwhelmingly blessed. And I wonder if I'm more present, like maybe I still have improvement to make, but I wonder if maybe I'm more present and just more grateful just because we had that close call. And I know it brought me and my wife closer together. So,
well, and that's going on while you're still running all this stuff, and while your wife was working on her stuff. And that's one of those things, man, where it's like, man, this would be a lot easier to call it quits, you know, and go get a normal job and take care of my kid. I mean, that's thoughts I have every now and then. Yeah. I'm like, man, this would be a lot easier if I would just work 9 to 5 and go pick up my son after.
Right. Absolutely.
Was there anything that, again, I'm putting you on the spot here, but was there anything that you're like,
for me, I couldn't, like I was fully aware that this could go bad. Right. And you know, obviously me and my wife have been looking forward to this for some time. So I was fully aware that this could go bad, but I did not let myself go to that place. I was like, I'm not going to pay the price of sobbing over this, you know, even though some tears were shed, but I'm not going to pay the price of just like dwelling on this and going through that pain until something happens. So you know, it's different for the mom because they have a different connection, right? Yeah. But I was just like, look, we're gonna be fine. Like we're gonna pray to God every day, and we did, you know, and not that everyone that prays to God every day gets what they want. We could go on another rabbit hole there.
God's will, yeah.
But you know, I really was just very full of hope. And so I just tried to keep my loved ones close, and I still never really thought about shutting down the business. You know, if the tragedy struck, it might have been a different story. But for me, I just had to keep it together for my wife, you know, because she really needed me to kind of be the strong one, I think. And, you know, this is a business topic kind of that interjects, but my goal is, and my executives know this, the goal is for my businesses to be coma proof. So if I go into a coma, the business survives. Yeah. And my businesses are coma proof. You know, they would not, if I wasn't doing meetings and trainings every week, or, you know, I do a weekly meeting basically with my executives. If I wasn't doing that, the businesses would not be as healthy, but they would survive. Like they know enough that if I go into a coma for a while, they got it. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I think and that's one thing we sell people on why they'd want to get into storage is because if you have it set up right, you literally, my coach, his name's AJ Osborne, he literally went into a coma, and his storage assets kept his family afloat until he, you know, learned how to walk again, basically. You know what I mean?
Well, I think like Shark Tank, they're always like, so if you get hit by a bus, your business is gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's really what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And you kind of asked about my wife too. So pivoting into her, right? That's where her business is kind of at that point where there's a couple key people that if you know, we hired our moms, so our moms both work for us respectively, and there's a huge blessing with that. But right now, her business is Lolo's Buff Bakery. They bake protein cookies, and so they're like healthy alternative, but they taste like a crumble cookie. And so right now, the business operates off of her mom and her, right? So they're in the process of, okay, this is going good, but it's really not coma proof at this point. Like when we go on trips, we go on a 3-week trip to Europe, my business is still making money and hers is kind of slowing down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're trying to decide if we want to go bigger and dump more into it and make that happen, or deciding if, you know, since being a mom, like maybe we want to sell that and pivot to something different too. So
yeah. When I brought up that question of, you know, was there any turmoil in the business because of what was going on at home type of thing, I call those like what's the alternative moments? Like it's what am I going to do? Just shut down and sit and get rid of the business and have all my work go to crap. Right. Yeah. So when I have these conversations with people and they're in the moment, you know, and they're like, well, you know, this or this or this could happen. And I'm like, well, you got to keep moving forward because that's the alternative. Yeah. You just stop. Yeah. You lose everything you've done. You know, you throw it in the trash. Like that's the alternative. Like it sounds pretty crazy when you voice that out loud. Like you just keep moving forward. So I love that you'd said that because I had to be the rock. I had to be the strong one, but what's the alternative? Like just get stressed out about situations that are likely not going to, or I'm going to stress about 10 situations and only one of them can happen. Right. Yeah. And so, and I mean, gosh, I have so many stories about having to be the rock. I felt like going through growing up and parents and dad. And
I can see that.
And but again, what's the alternative? Like, what are you going to do?
You stepped up, man. You stepped up and you should be proud of yourself. And I think going to more of like this is kind of a pivot into like a gospel topic, but we came here to be stretched, right? We came here to, you know, we are an eternal being. We existed before, we'll exist after. But we came here to see how much could we grow, right? And so I think we talk about a lot of these things in business, but you're bringing up personal trials, you know, stuff with my baby, stuff with your dad. It's like, those are the things that really you look back on your life and it's like, okay, in those moments, I found out what kind of a man I was, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily, I don't have a lot of instances where I did shut down. Right. Like, I mean, I'm sure there might've been one. Nothing comes to mind. Right. And like, same thing as you is, man, there's times you could have just shut down and mentally given up. And that's that stress tolerance, right? And that's what keeps moving that stress tolerance needle. You asked me about mail route stuff, dude. So I want to kind of go through that a little bit.
Please. Yeah. And we need to talk about government work. Well, I don't know how much time we have.
We're getting close on time. So let me pivot to this stuff because I rarely talk about me on the podcast because it's more of like the guest comes on and it's a platform for them to talk about what they're doing. And we kind of get through rabbit holes. Yeah. I asked. And I'm open to questions. It just seems like I'm more focused on the guest than me bringing up stuff that I'm doing. But so we have two. When I say we, I mean me. I have two post office contract routes. So I call them the mail routes. And for some reason, when I say mail routes, it comes out kind of funny. And so people are like, a mail route? Like, and they don't know if I'm talking about like a male or female or
post office contract.
Post office contract, I guess would be the best way to say it. So my brother Adam had worked as a 1099 employee for someone else that owned a contract. And this was when I was 17. And so when I turned 18, I was working at Checker Auto Parts. I was one of the managers. I made the schedule. And so he was like, hey, do you have a day or two that you want to split this route up with me? So that's kind of how the whole thing began. So he was going to college for accounting. He had school 3 mornings out of the week. And so I would make the schedule at the parts store to where I had those mornings off. And then I would go do the mail route for him. And so him and I did it switched off every day. Like, and we were doing it with his personal truck, like pickup truck. Yeah. And so we were like switching cars every night. And and I had a Jeep, he had a truck. Every night we were meeting up with each other because we do every other. I love it. So it wasn't just like 3 days and then he was 3 days. It was every other day. And I actually have stories because that's when I started dating my wife too. And so it's funny, dude. Let me interject this because I actually live on this side of town now. So I think about it every day. But when I was dating my wife and dating other girls, before my wife, I dated other girls, but I'd learned that like, if you can tie something, like if you go sit up at Dixie Rock, right? Like some like monument thing in town. Yeah. And you can make a memory off of that thing, whether they're dating you or not. Every time they drive by that thing, they think of you, right? That's funny. And so I would do that when I was dating girls. And so my wife actually, she was doing home health. And so she was driving to people, hospice and home care stuff. And she had a patient out by where my brother lived. And so we live in Tonnequint now. There's a Baptist church. And they would always put funny sayings on the sign. Yeah. And this is years and years and years ago, right? And they still do sometimes, and they would change them like every other day. And they would have all these funny sayings. And so it turned into like, when I was driving to go switch the truck with my brother, I would see that sign and I would text her like what it said on the sign. And then the next morning when she was going out, if it had changed, she would text me back what it changed to. And so we got like this, and she may not even remember this, I don't know, but it was a big thing for me. Every time we passed that sign, it was like, it would remind me of her and it would remind her of me. And now we live there. And so I drive past that sign like 3 times a day.
That's funny. That's funny. I love it.
Anyway, so we would switch cars with Adam all the time. And I started doing the route. I got in with the postmaster. Me and him were buddies. Still to this day, we're good friends. And when I started thinking about getting married, I told him like, hey man, I need to make more money. Like, I wasn't at the part store anymore. So I was just doing the post office route. And he's like, well, I can hire you as a clerk and we'll just make the schedule to where like you'll come in at 4 a.m, sort mail, clock out, go do your route. And then when you get done with the route, clock back in and work the window until we close.
Cool. And
so he worked with, I owe a lot of who I am to that dude. Cause he helped me through a lot. Like, even just a friend to be there, not even just a job,
just carving out a role for you.
Yeah.
A customized role. That's really cool.
And I mean, there's times I've went and sat in his office and talked to him about stuff, he's just one of those dudes. And, Sean Johnson, his name's Sean Johnson.
Cool.
And, so that's kind of was my in. And then I went from a clerk to like a part-time carrier to a full-time carrier. So I had my own route in Hurricane, and it destroyed my back. So I ended up
no dollies or what?
Well, I had one of those little box car things, right? They call them LLVs is what they're called. They're the old school mail vehicles where you drive on the other side of the car, the right-hand drives. And, but I did a lot of the businesses. And so I was in and out of that thing like 300 and something times a day. Wow. And I think just like being 6'1", like ducking in that thing and ducking out, like it just destroyed my back.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, and now I move safes, so explain that. But and so I got to the point where I was like living on painkillers, and I was getting shots like every 2 months in my back, and everything was super inflamed. I've lost my bottom 3 discs. So like just they're trashed. And so I got to the point I went and told him like, hey dude, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I told my mom and Adam like, hey, I think I'm going to have to quit. And this time I'm married, like Amanda was going through school and working when she could. And I was trying to build our holster business on the side. And
because you already had the safe business at this point.
No. So just doing holsters.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
just
doing holsters.
Okay.
And so I told Adam, like, I think I'm going to be done. I don't know what else to do. And he's like, dude, the guy doing the Apple Valley contract route just gave me his 2 weeks. Like, do you want to go back to that? And I was like, that's actually a really good option for me right now. But at the time, I'd always split days. So I said, if I go back to it, I need it 6 days a week.
Wow.
And he's like, done. And so he owned the vehicle. He paid for the gas. He paid for the insurance. He did all of that, right? And he was still working for technically the other guy. So the original guy still owned the contract and was contracting Adam.
And he was contracting you.
Exactly. So awesome. I was like subcontracted.
Yeah.
And so I told Adam, like, I basically need to remove you from the situation and I'll just go straight to Don, was the guy that owned it.
Don.
Yeah. Yeah. And Adam's like, that's fine. And so I ended up going back to that. It was about a 5-hour route. I did it for like 3 years. Wow. 6 days a week, like 0 days off, like holidays and Sundays.
Whoa.
Like did it every single, and I had to so I found the thing that I could make the most money with the least amount of time. So I would get home at like noon, and then I was building holsters all afternoon and all night.
Wow.
And that like got us through Amanda's master's program to when she was a nurse practitioner. And then like financially that took some weight off of me,
cool.
And then there's, so that route, actually it's Hurricane up to Hilldale. We drop off all the Utah mail to Hilldale, and then we deliver Apple Valley on the way back.
Oh, wow.
There's another contract route that goes out of Hurricane, and it goes Hurricane, Laverkin, Rockville, Springdale, and Zion.
Yeah.
And it's basically just transporting, we call them cages, like things of mail. So you're not really delivering anything. You're just pushing it off to those post offices.
Okay.
So the guy that had that one, he was past retirement age and he was ready to be done. And so I heard that he was giving that contract up, and the postmaster, Sean, again's like, dude, you should really look into that. And then I found out how much they were paying him. Dude, they were paying him like 37 grand a year.
Wow.
And he had to pay for a box truck. Box truck gets 12 miles per gallon, right? He's driving 72 miles a day.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, is he even making any money? Like after expenses?
Yeah.
And that's going 6 days a week. It's like 304 days out of the year.
Right.
And so
I mean, this is a good spot to ask, is government work a good place to be, right? Because we take on government work, but I'll tell you what, it doesn't have as good of a margin as private pay.
Right.
Right. It's just almost like a supplemental thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend, he's in a business where he's spinning his wheels, and his is more like disabilities, government funded, helping people with disabilities.
Okay.
But I'm like, dude, like, hopefully this works out, but I see you working hard and you have no control over the price point. Right. Like,
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing. And I know that some people, if you can get in and you know how to work the system with Medicaid, and my uncle's a franchisee. I have a business partner that's a franchisee in home health care. They work the system with the government where they make buku bucks.
Yeah.
But there's these other industries. It's like, is that a play?
Right. Yeah. I think it depends. Like I was saying earlier, I keep those routes because if everything went to hell, like I could go back and work them.
Yes. You could afford put food on the table.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like that would hopefully cover some of our bills.
Yeah.
And really like doing
Smart.
it every day, even the people that are doing it every day, it's not like they're getting rich. You know,
Right.
I mean, they're really not making it, which like kills me. And that's why one of the routes I'd probably lose money, because I pay more than what the contract calls for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have both of those now, and the one cool thing about it is it's very tight knit, and so even with all the contract routes in like southern Utah, I think there's like 4 people that own all of them.
Really?
And so like
4?
Once you're in, you're in.
Wow.
Like if you want, like it's a hassle for you to go even find one.
Yeah, like I'm thinking, okay.
And I get emails about them every other day.
If I wanted to send one of my moving trucks out to do one of these routes, it sounds like it's pretty exclusive club.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. But when they, and I don't know how it is with other stuff, but when you do the bid packet, it's like 130 something pages. Wow. And then they get down, like when you're doing your cost breakdown, it's down to like how many quarts of oil do you need that year to service the vehicle? Like it gets that specific, and you have to justify it all, right? So you can't just be like, I want 100K.
Yeah.
Like you have to justify every single thing about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean that's pretty much what it is. I've been doing that for over, well, gosh, it's been like 15 years since I started with Adam. I've owned routes for 6 years.
How much of your bandwidth does it take up?
None until it does.
Okay.
So you know what I mean?
Answer.
So
yeah.
So when employees are healthy and nothing's going on, and they have credit cards out there for the fuel, so I pay for the vehicles, I pay for the fuel, I pay for the insurance, all that stuff, right? And they're just swiping the card, and the card gets accepted, and they're and then I get paid once a month to go pay the cards back off and cut checks, and so really none until someone's sick one night, and one of our cover people is out of town, and so that means I got to go do it, and it's stuff like that. So like my brother Jason was helping me out for a while, and I've got a solid dude on the Zion route. He's solid, and he shows up every day, gets it done. I mean, really no issues with him. And then my brother Jason has worked for me like last year, and he had just moved on like last month. And man, during that year, And I have Megan too. She's solid. She just has another job. So her schedule's not as open.
Right.
But Jason, that's all he was doing. And I went like a year and I wasn't out on either route. And it was just phone calls every now and then that I had to field, right?
Sure.
Like postmaster calling, asking about something,
Okay.
or supervisor asking about something. Or, we got 2 bad tires.
Yeah.
You cool if I go put new tires on, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good, man. If it doesn't eat up your bandwidth, it sounds like a great insurance policy, like you're saying, for against the day of challenge, right?
Right.
Still got something in to put food on the table.
Yeah, and they our Zion route, it's the contract, so they're 4 or 5 year contracts, and the contract is up in just like on December 1st. So this
year.
Yeah.
So this year we're coming in like 150% above last year.
Right. I'm like, you guys drove up inflation. It's your fault.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And so this is my first time renewing on my own. And so I'm kind of curious of how that does work. Because it's basically they sent me an email that had, I think, 20 pages to fill out. And it was like, are you interested in first one? Are you interested in renewing? Mm-hmm. And it's like basically yes or no. Right. And if you are, then fill out all of these and return them to us.
Yeah.
And so I did all of that, returned it. And there was one part that said, because I'm agreeing to the current contract. So it's not like, are you interested and we'll reevaluate your pay? It's like,
interesting.
Yeah.
You're just renewing the same
I'm renewing this, but it says that if there is, what's the word?
If we have budget left over, what do you want or what?
No, it's like if it justifies more pay, we'll have that conversation kind of basically not in those exact words, but like if there is justification.
And you're like circling that part.
I'm like underlining.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, cause I mean, they kill me on gas. Like I think the last time I had an up on gas, it was like $2.95 and they upped it to, so like the contract will adjust to fuel. That's the only thing it adjusts to.
Interesting.
And so when you bid on the contract and fuel's $2.20 and now it's $3.50,
right?
Like that doesn't go with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. There's days where I'm like, this just isn't even worth it. And then when I have solid people, I don't even think about it. I just cut checks on the first.
That's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I just the government work piece has been on my mind a little bit lately because I'm trying to advise my friend on if he should stick in his industry and because he has a lot of hassle, and I think he's working. Here's the way I see it for my friend, right? And it's different for us because I think we both have other cash cows. Like you have your SAFE, I have my moving company, right? So for me to take some supplemental government contracts, and same for you, like just supplemental, right? Even if the margins aren't as high, it's good to have that, right?
Yeah.
It keeps food on the table for others is one big thing you said. For my other guy, this is kind of his main gig, the government work. And my thought is basically, I just don't know. I see him working hard, so like very diligently. And I just see like if he was in the open market and capitalism in a service industry or something, I just see him as taking home way more for less hassle.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think it's what's the goal for him? Like we were talking, is it to replace yourself with someone else, or are you self-employed and that's your job for 50 years?
Yeah. And I know his goal is to replace himself. So
yeah. So anyways. Is that capital there? I don't know.
To be determined.
Yeah.
So
cool, man. We'll wrap it up. I wrote down the time that we started, and then we kind of kept bullshitting. So I'm not even 100% sure what time we started, but we should be over an hour. And that's kind of the goal, is to stay around an hour. So dude, thanks for carving some time out.
It was a blast, man.
Yeah, dude.
It's overdue. I'm glad we did it.
I know when you came up to me at the conference, I was like, that's Ben. I was like, I've never actually met him. And so I'm glad we could put it together.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. It's a good time. We'll do it again. We'll bring you on, see how much more growth and maybe 2 more kids and see where you guys are at.
That's the goal. Anytime.
Yeah. All right, man. Appreciate you. Episode 98. You own it.
Sweet.
Derek Legg Podcast. All right, guys. You're still with us. Appreciate you being with us. Like, share, go follow Ben. If you have any moving or storage needs, Big Ben, he's where it's at. Do people call you Big Ben? Where'd that come from?
If you could cut this part out, but Big Ben is actually my dad. When I was a kid, he wanted to teach me hard work. So he made business cards that said Big Ben's moving.
Love it, dude.
People think it was like my idea. Like I think I'm big or something. I don't. And sometimes I show up to the door, people are like, you're not that big.
Where's Big? Where's
yeah,
Big
like,
Ben?
Okay, I'm big enough to get the job done, right? I have big ideas now, right?
Love it. All right, guys, go follow Ben if you're still with us. Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Done, dude.